4 men in scrubs rushed S.E. Young's battered body through the hospital. They urged each other to be careful, despite the obvious urgency. A doctor adjusted the oxygen mask on S.E. Young's face as they raced through the corridors. Outside, near a police car, a man sighed heavily. The police officer radioed in, requesting confirmation on 6 male and 2 female suspects. The police radio crackled with static. Eyewitness reports confirmed 8 suspects, all wearing Nunhuang middle school uniforms. Uniforms were confirmed. One of the officers slammed his fist, enraged that middle schoolers could do something like this. He cursed the wet behind the ears little brats. The other officer with glasses, looking grim, said that this was beyond regular school violence. The victim was barely clinging to life, and this was going to make some noise, so they'd better take the suspects into custody before it got out. The officer with glasses wondered if this would make the news. He was pretty much out of it. He heard someone say that they were sure they would take care of it. Suddenly, he heard someone calling his name. S.E. Young. It was his aunt's voice. She was calling his name, asking who he was. She asked if he was awake, identifying herself as his aunt. His aunt was there, holding his hand. She asked him if he recognized her. He weakly asked if she was his aunt, the one who got married and moved overseas. He wondered where he was. Dark figures flashed through his mind. He was back in the hospital bed, struggling to open his eyes. His aunt was calling out to him, desperate for a response. She continued to call his name with increasing urgency. A doctor and a nurse rushed down the hallway toward them. The doctor prepared an injection, while his aunt watched on, overcome with emotion. S.E. Young was still unconscious, struggling to breathe. S.E. Young felt a sharp pain. His aunt told the doctor that S.E. Young had lost consciousness again. The doctor reassured her, stating that he had administered a sedative, and that S.E. Young was fine. She pointed out that he had just woken up before losing consciousness again. The doctor told her not to worry, repeating that he would be fine now, and reminded her that he had said S.E. Young might wake up sometime that day. She remembered that his dad had thought he would never wake up. His aunt recalled that his sister had insisted that they never give up hope until the end. His aunt continued, telling him that they both swore they would never forgive those bastards, and that they would make sure they got their just punishments. She explained that no matter what happened, they referred the case for prosecution and sued them, saying they did everything they could. She added that both the prosecution and the judge pressured them to settle, but his dad turned them down flat. She told him that all his father wanted was for them to be punished for what they had done. She admitted that he couldn't accept the results, and she wouldn't have either, because all they offered to settle was just a few tens of thousands of dollars, after 8 people ganged up and put him in this state. His aunt continued, telling him that all they got was suspension from school, and all his homeroom teacher and the principal got was a letter of admonishment in their permanent file. She explained that his dad felt devastated and furious, and that both his parents, who were usually quiet, started to change little by little. Printed out their grievances and handed them to everyone they saw. They posted on the web, pleading their case, and even went out and collected signatures. They pulled every string they had, used every connection, pleading their case, telling everyone how unfair and unjust all this was. But no one cared, because information couldn't get out. Everything they posted on the net got taken down almost immediately, and the TV or the newspapers wouldn't run their story. His aunt continued, explaining that the police were useless and that the prosecutor tried to stop them. She added that anyone who tried to help them in any way either got fired or transferred. She said that his dad understood then what kind of influence their parents had, just what kind of power they had. According to her, the police, the prosecution, the reporters, those parents were making them dance to their tunes. She reminded him that he stayed in a coma, seemingly never to wake up, and those bastards served their suspension and went back to school. She asked him how he thought that made his mom and dad feel. She believed that was why his dad poured gasoline all over himself in front of the Guang woman. His aunt continued, telling him that his mother stood with a sign around her neck in front of his father, who was engulfed in flames. She described her screaming to the world about the unfairness, pointing to his father on fire and begging them to watch and hear their plight, saying it was surely a dream. She repeated that it must be a dream, that she wanted it to be a dream. He thought to himself that all he was doing was sleeping, just sleeping. Struggling to find the words, his aunt managed to pour her heart out. She revealed that his father, engulfed in flame that took his life, was recorded by bystanders on their cell phones. News spread like wildfire. She continued, telling him that his mom went and embraced his father, and joined him in the conflagration. Even to this day, 2 months after the funeral rites were read to his dear departed parents, S.E. Young realized that he had been deep asleep. His aunt declared that those bastards got what they deserved, every single one of them. She revealed that all 8 of those bastards got juvenile detention. She explained that the police, the prosecutors, and the press were all falling over themselves for the opportunity to punish them, launching special investigations and joint investigations. The press, she admitted, was certainly terrifying if they wanted to be. She told him that while he was still in a coma, even the president paid him a visit, which was how much the entire country was in an uproar. She continued, explaining that they were ordinary and average, they had nothing. Therefore, they could do nothing. His dear parents accomplished all that, paying the ultimate price by dying in flames. With the contract signed, the agent reminded them that rent was due on the second day of every month. The man in the suit assured them that if they should come across anything of inconvenience or any problems, they should contact the management office. The woman with curly hair exclaimed that they should do more than that. Since they had signed the contract and moved in already, they should visit the owner. The man in the suit stared at her. The man in the suit replied that it wouldn't be necessary, as their management office had been contracted to handle all matters pertaining to the lease. So whatever their issue may be, they should contact them for its resolution. The woman insisted that even so, they had moved in, and good manners dictated that they should greet the owner. The man in the suit adjusted his glasses, warning them that the owner of the building was not fond of human interaction. The woman with curly hair looked at him, surprised. The man in the suit raised a finger, telling them there was one thing they should know. He added that he was giving them this advice as a caution rather than a favor. The man revealed that the owner of the building lived in a room on the rooftop. The camera panned out, showing the full view of the building. The woman with curly hair looked up, saying yes. The man in the suit stared with a stern look, then his expression changed to a smile. He extended his sincere wish for all good things from then on, thanking them. Back in the room, a hand tapped on the glass screen. Meanwhile, the man with blue hair sat in his room, surrounded by trash, staring blankly at the screen. Meanwhile, S.E. Young sat in his room, surrounded by trash, staring blankly at the screen. He began searching for information on the Shinjin Group, which was ranked second domestically for financial services and was forecasted to move to first place. The search revealed that the Shinjin Group worked for the happiness of all, focusing on their people, not their operations. He then looked into Jang Sungchao, who had resigned as a partner from the equal justice law firm due to his children's involvement in the school violence scandal. The candidacy announcement by the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Jang Yong-hoo, had come as a great surprise, as he had previously shown no political ambitions. Jang Sung-il, the firstborn son and the current prosecutor general, was quick to distance himself from his father's entry into the political realm. He then looked into Blue Wing Media and whether it could maintain its incredible growth. Only 5 years from its inception, it always stood shoulder to shoulder with broadcast stations. The school violence scandal by the head of the firm's children 2 years ago had caused difficulties, but they were able to pivot from the troubles, actually benefiting from the notoriety. He researched Goodfield, a leading domestic internet company that started as a portal-based search engine. The company had announced the closing of the Nuriorum service and focused on developing the social media-based fence service. Despite a late start, Goodfield had predatorily taken over and merged with other companies, emerging as the biggest player in Korea's portal-based search engine service, virtually a monopoly. The Goodfield portal also had a dark side, including a lack of privacy regarding users' search history and the possibility of abuse due to its de facto monopoly. Suddenly, his phone pinged, notifying him that the rent payment of $33,857.81 had been deposited. He sat at his computer, surrounded by overflowing trash bags. Someone wanted him to be somewhere in 10 minutes. He stared intently, trying to decide what to do. Just then, a loud banging echoed through the room. Someone was at the door, demanding that he open it. He realized he might have misheard the message. He thought that he was supposed to be somewhere in 10 minutes, but maybe it was only 1. Just then, the door burst open. A woman's voice called out to S.E. Young, asking if he wanted to see her and telling him that she rushed over from the hospital just for him. The shadow of a woman appeared on the frosted glass of the door. S.E. Young peered through the slightly open door. A hand reached out, seemingly to grab him. The woman, revealed to be his aunt, remarked that it was cold and questioned why he lived in the rooftop room, considering he owned the building. She told him that she wouldn't live there if she were him. She warned him that he would go blind if he kept living like this and told S.E. Young Tak to turn on the lights. Someone flipped the light switch. His aunt implored him to live like a human being and questioned what was up with the state of the room. S.E. Young sighed, wondering what his aunt was doing. The aunt explained that she had a group blind date today and wanted to consult with him real quick to wrap things up. S.E. Young stared silently. His aunt asked about his arm. He responded that it hurt a little. She then asked about his legs and back. Gave the same answer. She then asked about his eyes and head. The aunt took his battle marks pressure. The aunt sighed, looking at the time on the clock. The woman with brown hair stood before S.E. Young, telling him that he needed to stop this. She explained that it had been 2 years already and that both she and the doctor were at their limits letting this go on, mentioning the government agency review they had to think of. She asked if he was even listening. The woman sat on the edge of the desk, looking at her phone with a concerned expression. She yelled that she wasn't saying all this just to get paid, asking if he was really going to get stuck this way. S.E. Young looked down, lost in thought. The woman with brown hair was clearly frustrated. She told him that they needed to stop this, suggesting that even if he didn't go back to school, He should at least take a step outside. She urged him to meet some people. Se-young sat in front of his computer, staring blankly at his phone. Se-young scrolled through his phone, looking at a social media post. He stared intently at the screen. The phone displayed a message, informing him that he was restricted from viewing the posts because he wasn't friends with the poster. Another message popped up, stating that based on the privacy settings, he was prohibited from accessing the post. Se-young turned to his computer screen, which was filled with lines of code. Se-young stared at his phone, his expression unreadable. Read a message from Hyun, who asked Soo-young if her grandfather was going to be the president. Chang-soo chimed in, mentioning that he saw Soo-young's uncle standing behind her grandfather, and that he used to be a Secret Service agent. Hyun excitedly responded that if things went well, they could return to Korea soon. Soo-hyun then cautioned them to be careful, even in the secret chat. Hyun apologized to Soo-hyun for talking back and promised to be more careful. Soo-hyun warned Daeun and Chang-soo to be careful as well, reminding them of the consequences if people found out that the five of them were in the US. Daeun said he would be careful, but Hyun kept messing up. Jun-hyuk then asked Daeun to send him some money through a discreet route. Se-young was reading messages from his friends. Eugene mentioned she was at a party, and that Soo-young had the boys flocking to her. Daeun replied that he was jealous. Eugene then asked if he had any left. Hyun wondered when they would get to leave. Soo-hyun told Lee Soo-ho to keep an eye on Soo-young and Eugene, and to make sure they didn't get selfies with any guys that would get them all in trouble. Lee Soo-ho simply replied yup. Eugene responded that she could see all of this and called them jerks. Jun-hyuk called Lee Soo-ho an idiot for chasing Soo-hyun all the way to the US, only to get ordered around. Finally, Soo-hyun asked where the hell he was. He tapped the screen to close the message app. Se-young stood in his room, staring at the blank computer screen. He lay back down on the mattress in his trash-filled room. Se-young lay motionless on his bed, surrounded by trash bags. Camera pulled back to show the building from the outside, the window framing his room. The perspective shifted to an aerial view of the city. The view continued to pull back, showing the curvature of the Earth. Finally, the full planet came into view, illuminated by a distant sun. The camera continued to pull back, showing the curvature of the Earth. The view continued to pull back, further and further away from the world. Suddenly, a massive sword descended from the heavens. The impact created a shockwave of dark energy. Se-young looked up, startled by the sudden tremor. Se-young's eyes snapped open, the sound jolting him awake. He was sweating, trying to figure out what had just happened. He muttered, wondering what the hell was going on. He realized the sound hadn't come from below, but from something striking something else. He cautiously walked through his trash department, trying to find the source of the noise. He paused, wondering if it was a thief, or something else entirely. He looked back at his past, a horde of shadowy figures with razor-sharp teeth chasing him. Sweat dripped from his brow as he clutched at his chest, trying to calm his racing heart. His eyes darted around, filled with a primal fear that threatened to consume him. His hand clenched into a fist, knuckles white with tension. He took a shaky breath and stood up, his bare feet touching the cold wooden floor. He stood before the door, sweat trickling down his face, a stark reminder of the fear that had kept him confined for so long. Se-young methodically began disengaging the complex array of locks that secured his isolation. Each click echoed in the silence, amplifying the tension that gripped him. With a final turn, the last lock gave way, and he slowly pulled the door open. He stepped outside, a gasp escaping his lips as he took in the world beyond his self-imposed prison. Se-young's face was a mask of conflicted emotions, determination warring with lingering fear. His eyes widened, reflecting the unbelievable sight before him. He stared in disbelief, barely able to process it. As Se-young turned around, stepping away from the door he had just opened. Embedded in the center of the rooftop was a gigantic blade, engulfed in flames. As Se-young stared at the flaming sword that had pierced his rooftop, the sheer size of the blade was overwhelming. He wondered why a sword like that was on his roof, but more than that, he wanted to know who was responsible. He was desperate for answers, wondering how it was even possible. As Se-young was overwhelmed by the situation, Se-young took a few tentative steps toward the massive sword. He approached the sword, taking in its full form from a distance. As Se-young thought it looked like something straight out of an online game. He wondered if it was called a two-handed sword, or maybe a Zweihander. He circled around the blade, trying to figure out how deeply it was embedded in the rooftop. He guessed that it wasn't stuck too deep, and perhaps it was even loose. As Se-young stood with his arms crossed, pondering how the sword got there. But who and how was the question? He glanced towards the door to the stairs and noticed that it was still locked. He was still trying to figure out who and how this could have happened. The questions swirled around in his mind, as he desperately sought answers. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the city as two onlookers stared up at the building in shock. As Se-young was clearly overwhelmed by the situation, not knowing what to do. He repeated that he didn't know anything about the sword. He sighed, telling himself not to get curious and not to ask any questions. He muttered that he didn't care where it came from or who stuck it in his roof. He grumbled about someone starting a new Excalibur legend on his roof. Still lying on the bed, S.E. Young's mind raced. He muttered to himself. He suddenly decided he didn't care anymore. S.E. Young turned his head to look at the sword in his roof. Drumbeats echoed as he stared at the massive blade. Drumbeats echoed in the air as the massive sword stood embedded in the roof. The sound resonated through S.E. Young's body as he lay on the bed. His eyes narrowed as the drums grew louder. The beat intensified, joined by the blare of horns. Then came the sound of heavy stomps, as if giants were approaching. The sound of stomping grew louder. S.E. Young's eyes widened in fear as he heard the approaching army. Stomping continued, each step echoing like a thunderclap. The horns blared, adding to the cacophony of the approaching army. S.E. Young stared in disbelief at the sight before him. S.E. Young's eyes widened in disbelief. The sound of stomping grew rapidly louder. The ground trembled with each step. S.E. Young found himself surrounded by an army of heavily armored soldiers. The soldiers parted, and he saw a figure in a red cloak holding a massive, ornate sword. The sheer force of the god's power sent S.E. Young flying backwards, his face contorted in pain as he struggled to withstand the overwhelming pressure. He landed hard, the impact sending a jolt through his body, and he tasted battle marks. He looked up, his eyes widening in disbelief. S.E. Young found himself in a desolate, fiery landscape. Before him stood the ornate sword, planted firmly in the ground. The reflection of the sword shimmered in his eye, a silent invitation to claim its power. S.E. Young woke up with a gasp, sweat beading on his forehead. He sat up in bed, the familiar surroundings of his room slowly coming into focus. He looked up, blinking in confusion, and then covered his face with his hand. He muttered in disbelief, questioning if it had all been just a dream. He suddenly noticed something and turned his head sharply. S.E. Young was startled by a strange noise. He wondered if it was all real. He cautiously peeked outside his room. The door creaked open slightly. S.E. Young could not believe what he was seeing. He questioned if it was all a lie. S.E. Young stared in disbelief at the massive sword embedded in his roof, now surrounded by an inferno. He was astonished that it was up in flames again. Hey, real quick, my mom said this video would get 0 subscribers. If you enjoyed the story so far, click subscribe to watch the next part.